Oh, hello. So I actually just got done filming my August wrap up. So I'm going to move on to my September wrap up, so it'll probably go up a little bit later, but I'm filming it at the same time. And as I mentioned in my last one, it was just kind of delayed filming a bunch of stuff because work has just been crazy, but I was able to get away for a weekend and I'm just hanging out, just drinking some rosé and reading basically for an entire long weekend. So it's been great. But finally able to sit down and film my September wrap up. And again, I was able to at least keep up with reading vlogs, so I'll be sure to link all of my September reading vlogs below if you want to hear more about these. I'll just link everything below. The first book I was able to finish in the month of September was Royal Assassin by Robin Hobbs. This is the second book in the Farseer trilogy. I adore this series. I really enjoyed both of them. So they're very, very slow. So particularly the first half of both of the books in these series were really, like, I still enjoyed being in this world and following these characters, but they're definitely very, very slow stories that kind of slowly build up. And I'm guessing the third one might be the same way. We'll see. I haven't picked up the third one yet, but you know, maybe the third one is that way as well. But the series follows Fitz Chivalry Farseer, who is, when the series starts, he's 6 years old and he's dropped off by, I think, his maternal grandfather. So he's the bastard son of the king in waiting, and so he's dropped off by his maternal grandfather who had been taking care of him and basically just drops him back off at the palace, or, you know, where the royal family lives, and it's just like, all right, y'all take care of him. And so he's actually kind of raised by the stable master and, you know, has an interesting relationship with a bunch of people in this world because he is technically kind of part of the royal family, but he's also very removed from the royal family. So his father actually abdicates when Fitz comes to the palace. He actually just abdicates and leaves. But the king wants Fitz to be trained as an assassin, so, you know, he gets some training, and there's also some magic that is involved in this series. I actually really like the magic in this series. And yeah, so he becomes a royal spy, a royal assassin, goes on some quests and adventures, and, you know, the second one just kind of continues on after the first one. He's a teenager in the second one, and so just continues the story. And I particularly adored the second half of this book. There was a lot of stuff that was starting to pick up, and you can kind of see where this series is going. And I'm just excited to pick up the third one and continue loving these characters in this world. I don't particularly like, this is kind of a theme with like all of my wrap-ups, I don't particularly love the romantic elements that is kind of more prevalent in this one because he is a teenager. So not super into the romantic elements of this series, but overall I absolutely adore this series. There are some new characters that are introduced, or were introduced kind of at the very end, but we actually get to know them some more in the second one when they were introduced in kind of the end of the first book. And so yeah, I don't know, I'm very excited to read the third book in this series. So I next read A Beautifully Foolish Endeavor by Hank Green. This follows an absolutely remarkable thing that I read last year and absolutely loved. So I listened to the audiobook this time. I read it physically, the first book physically. And so I absolutely adored this book. I loved the audiobook. I thought the narrators did a fantastic job. There were some people that were not really loving it because it focuses less on the main character of the first book for, you know, just plot reasons. There are just other people who are doing important things kind of to the story, and so you follow their perspectives as well. And he says there are some people who weren't as happy about that, but I actually really, really liked getting to know these other characters. And I love the narrators. I thought the pace and just kind of the scope of the story just really expanded in the second one in a really, really cool way. And I just freaking had a blast listening to this. I could not stop listening. I mean, it was just so much fun. It was so entertaining. I love just kind of the commentary that's throughout this series. I think it's just incredibly interesting, you know, an interesting story, an interesting kind of theme that Hank Green is talking about here. And at the end of this audiobook as well, he actually has an interview with someone where they kind of talk more about the themes of the book that I thought was really, really interesting. So I would recommend the audiobook, not just for the narrators, but also for that interview. Anyway, next book I finished was Wondersmith by Jessica Townsend. I cannot think of the series and not just have a big friggin' smile on my face. This is such a precious, perfect series. So the first book is Nevermore. This is the second book in that series, and this story follows Morgan Crow, who is a cursed child. So she literally gets blamed for everything bad that happens in her town, and she is cursed to die on her 11th birthday, and Jupiter North comes and rescues her and whisks her away to the magical land of Nevermore and gives her the opportunity to compete to be a part of the Wondrous Society. And so, you know, it follows the trials to, you know, try to become part of this society. And he's, you know, Jupiter North is kind of her mentor through the process. And, you know, the next book just kind of continues on after the first one. And I freaking love this story. Like, it is just so charming, but not like overly cheesily charming. Like, but it is just so charming, so whimsical. I absolutely adore the characters. I absolutely love Morgan. I love the people and the you know, just the characters that she's around. I love the hotel that she lives in. It is just absolutely fabulous, and I want to go and stay at this hotel right now. And it's just so much fun. Like, I can't, and the narrator is great too, but I can't listen to the story and just not, or think about the story and have a huge smile on my face. Like, it's just delightful. And Hollowpox, the third book, is about to come out, so I'm definitely keeping my eye out for that one, and hopefully I'll be able to snag the audiobook as it comes onto my library's app. So I love this series, and I will forever cherish this series, and I will want to reread this many times. So I next read Shielded by Kaylin Flanders. This was a fairy loot book, and this one follows a princess who needs to marry for political reasons. She doesn't particularly want to, but she ultimately agrees because she knows that it's going to be best for her people. So she marries, or agrees to marry, someone who is from a land that's, I believe, south of theirs, in exchange for troops and supplies to help for some fights that are happening on the northern side of their country. And as she is going to this other land, like the caravan that she and some other people that are with her, you know, she's taking this group of people to this new land. While they're on their way, they are attacked by some mages, and then it becomes she needs to survive and get to this new land, and she needs to kind of figure out what happened, and she figures out a bunch of politics that are going on and how she can kind of help, and figures out kind of her place in that whole situation. This one wasn't particularly special to me. I might check out the sequel, maybe not, I don't know. Just the characters seemed kind of just generic to me. They weren't particularly memorable, and it was a very slow moving story that I was interested enough to keep reading, but you know, it was a pretty slow story that ultimately I just wanted more from, I guess. I don't know. So the next book that I listened to was The Train to Impossible Places by P.G. Bell, and this was a freaking delight. I love this one. This one follows Susie, and a train just appears in her hallway one night, and her parents have been kind of put to sleep by the people who were moving this train through their house, and Susie was also supposed to be asleep so that they wouldn't know that this train came through their house, and they would be none the wiser the next morning. But Susie was wide awake, and she, you know, goes out to investigate to see this train just in the hallway, and you know, she's trying to figure out what's going on, and it turns out that it is a train that takes mail to the impossible places, and she ends up just kind of going for a ride on this train and helping deliver mail. Of course, one of her deliveries gets complicated, and she uncovers a conspiracy that's going on in the impossible places that she needs to help resolve. And it's just a delight. Like, it was just so much fun. It was pretty action-packed, but it was also just super whimsical and funny and charming, and the characters were just a delight from start to finish. It was just such a fun story. And I just had such a good time listening to it. Fiona Hardingham narrates. I think she did a really, really exceptional job narrating this one. And yeah, it was just, that's all I can say. Like, it was just a freaking delight. Next book I read was The Faithless Hawk by Margaret Owen. This is the follow-up to The Merciful Crow, and follows Fi, who is a crow, or a part of the crow caste. So in this world, there are different castes. They all have the names of different kinds of birds, and the crow caste is the lowest one. There's the Sinner's Plague that's kind of going around in this world, and the crows are the only ones who are immune from it, and so they're the ones that are kind of tasked with basically picking up the bodies of the people who have died from the Sinner's Plague. And so she's part of this group of crows, and they go to the palace one day because the prince and someone else are supposedly dead from the plague, but it turns out they were faking it and just needed to escape the palace because the prince feared that his stepmom was going to kill him. And so, Fi kind of becomes part of this political mix of stuff going on, and they're trying to figure out who they can trust and who they can't trust, and can they do something to kind of help take away the bad people. And they're trying to figure out how to essentially make sure that crows can be protected in the future, because they are not treated well. And so, yeah, I think this is just a super unique world, a super interesting world. The magic involves teeth, which is just super interesting. And I really enjoyed, I listened to both of these on audio. I have a physical copy of the first one. But it was just a super fun world. It was really, really interesting. I really liked the characters. I like Fi a lot. And, just really enjoy kind of the crew that she's around as well. And just seeing her kind of grow into being a leader for her people, and seeing her kind of realize a bunch of stuff that's going on around her and how she can help, even if it's really, really difficult. And I just had a really good time listening to this one. So the next thing I listened to was One by One by Ruth Ware, of course narrated by the ever wonderful Imogen Church. And this one follows a group of co-workers who work for a startup that's a music app where you can essentially kind of follow a celebrity, for example, or follow your friends and see what they're listening to at that moment and kind of listen along with them. And this company, they're going for a kind of company retreat at a ski chalet in the Alps, and stuff starts going wrong. There's storms and avalanches, and so they're stuck in this chalet, and people are starting to die one by one. And you follow a couple of different perspectives. One from the group of co-workers, someone who works at this chalet. And I had a fun time listening to this one. I mean, I do think it's in part, it's still, all of Ruth Ware's books are slow, but I don't mean that in a bad way. Like, I don't know why, like, her books just kind of typically work for me pretty well in terms of just the writing, and I don't mind the slow pacing. I think she does a really good job just kind of building a story up and just kind of building it slowly and kind of increasing the creep and tension throughout the story. And I don't know, I just had a fun time listening to this one. I mean, I never can, like, once I start a Ruth Ware book, I never can stop. So, like, I listened to this one pretty quickly, like I do all of her books. And yeah, I had a good time, honestly, listening to this one. So the next book that I read is a new favorite, and that is The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. I felt like I was really going to love this one just based on everything that I had been hearing. And oh my god, this is this month was full of just delightful, charming books, and like, this one just was delightful and charming. So this one follows Linus, and he works for a government agency that kind of oversees, regulates the orphanages where magical youth live. And he's a caseworker. He'll go around and make sure that the children are treated well and make sure that they aren't, a danger to themselves or others, and just kind of make sure that they're happy, healthy kids. And he gets an assignment from extremely upper management, and he is going to go to a particular orphanage that's kind of out on an island, and he goes there thinking it's just going to be a typical case, and he meets Arthur, who runs the orphanage. He meets a bunch of different characters on this island. He meets the kids. He meets one of the kids is supposed to be the Antichrist, Lucy, short for Lucifer, and there are a bunch of other kids at this orphanage. One of them wants to be a bellhop, and I can't not smile when I think about his character. And it's just Linus just kind of ends up falling in love with these kids and Arthur in this orphanage, and kind of realizes that things are just more complex than he kind of originally believed and had kind of lived his whole life thinking. He didn't really question a lot in his life, and going to this orphanage and staying there for a while just really led him to question a lot. And he kind of saw how magical kids were treated out in this town that's nearby, or near this island, and just kind of saw that firsthand, and just really learned how to question things and stand up for himself and stand up for these kids, and really just fight for something that he found that he believed in, and found something to believe in, and just kind of found out how he could just live his best life. And it was such a great story. I loved it so much. I listened to the audiobook and really enjoyed the narrator, and I will be for sure getting a physical copy of this book as well, and just rereading it many, many, many times. So I next read The Lost Plot by Genevieve Cogman. This is the 4th book in the Invisible Library series. I think this one's my favorite so far. This one follows a 1920s New York-esque world, and dragons. So it's kind of Fae and dragon are kind of the two main groups aside from the librarians in this series. And so some of the books are more Fae focused, some of them are more dragon focused, or some kind of focus on the conflict between the two. So this was a pretty dragon focused book, and kind of dragon politics that were going on. I just thought I loved the setup of this one the most, and it was a lot of fun. It was so much fun just kind of figuring out this dragon politics, and Irene getting caught in the middle of it, of course. And yeah, I had a good time. So the last book I finished in the month of September was A Pinch of Magic by Michelle Harrison, and I also listened to this one on audio. This one follows 3 sisters, and they live in a particular place, and they are cursed to not be able to leave. And essentially this story follows them finding out that they're cursed, and finding out that they magic is involved in that curse. There's also some magical objects that have been handed down in their family that they find out about, and essentially they use these magical objects to try to lift the curse on their family. It's the daughters in the family in particular that are cursed throughout time, and so they try to use these magical objects to lift the curse on their family. And I really love this one. I love their grandmother, I loved the sisters, I loved the group that they were with through this story, and I just had so much fun listening to this one. I just thought the world was super interesting. I could picture everything so clearly in my head, and I really, really adored the sisters and the relationship between them, and just their sheer determination and willpower and resourcefulness, and just relying on each other and trusting each other to be able to do what was needed to kind of hopefully get this curse lifted, and just finding out more about the curse's history along the way, and learning to trust people even if they don't seem like they should at first. It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this one a lot. So that was my super whimsical, magical, delightful September set of books that I read. It was such a good reading month, honestly one of the better reading months I've had. And I've had overall like pretty good reading year. This was a really good month and a pretty good year of reading, so definitely had a lot of fun. Let me know if you read any of these or if you want to read any of these. Let me know how your September reading month went, and of course be sure to subscribe for more bookish content. I will link my Twitter and Instagram down below. That's where I like to hang out, and I will also leave resources on how you can support the Black Lives Matter movement, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.